time and effort into their presentations, so hopefully it'll be a good day for everyone. So I'm kicking off today with looking at therapeutic potentials of ketogenic diet. Just by show of hands in the room, how many people know what ketogenics are, know what ketosis is, done a ketogenic diet? Okay, quite a few people. So first off, can anybody tell me who this cheeky chappy is? Anyone want to shout out? It is, yes. So this is the late Dr. Robert Atkins, and for anybody who knows me, knows that I'm actually quite a big fan of the work of what Dr. Atkins did in the past before. There's quite a lot of misconceptions around what Atkins completely stands for, and I think one of them is around the concept that this is kind of where low carb was born from. This is where ketogenics came from, and it's actually not the case surrounding ketogenics. And unfortunately from this, I think this is where a lot of the kind of the fad ideas around low carbohydrates and ketogenics came from. Whereas actually, if you take a look back to the history of what a ketogenic diet is, it actually stems as far back as biblical times. And if you look at the Hippocrates form of medicine, then a ketogenic diet was the only form of treatment for epilepsy way back, and it's the only recorded form of treatment that we had back in the time. Following on from there, we then have had a whole host of different types of studies that have been done, ranging starting from the 1920s. Epilepsy is the most studied form of therapeutic intervention that has been done with ketogenic diets. Unfortunately though, in the 1970s we had the reintroduction of anti-epileptic drugs, and this is what saw the use of the therapeutic potential of ketogenics fall away, and kind of the education that's come from there as well has all been more based around these medications. As well as this, obviously we think Atkins is a kind of the sort of the godfather of where low carbohydrate came from. But actually the first recording of a ketogenic diet, particularly for weight loss, was by this guy here known as William Banting, and that's why many of you have been keeping up with what's been happening in the world of nutrition, particularly with LCHF. There's a lot of this buzzword around Banting, particularly in South Africa as well. And this comes from this guy here who wrote a letter in Corpulence in 1863 about how a ketogenic diet can actually be used for the treatment of obesity. So it's been around for a very, very long time and popular to common thinking. It's not a fad diet that has just come around from the 1970s. So what actually is ketosis? So this is a really busy slide, and I'm not expecting anybody to learn biochemistry within this day. Believe it or not, we do have to learn this in uni pretty much off by heart. I think Rich can probably testify to this one. So what is ketosis? So under normal conditions, your body will take the carbohydrates that you eat, so it takes that and turns it into glucose. And it's the glucose that your body uses for energy. Now when you deprive your body of this glucose, that then means that it can't get energy from there, and it has to get energy from another substrate. So it goes to these alternative, what's known as ketone bodies. Now, popular again to what a lot of people say is that you need carbohydrates for energy. Hands up who thinks that we need carbohydrates for energy. That's kind of what you hear and what we often hear. Now, it's very much, it's the preferred fuel for the body, but it's not always essential. And actually these ketone bodies, these three main ketone bodies that are produced, can actually provide the body with sufficient energy that it needs. Another common misconception with it is that you will hear that people say that ketosis is really dangerous to the body, it's really detrimental. And the main reason for that is people get this metabolic process mixed up with ketosis. So diabetic ketoacidosis is a certain metabolic process that can happen, and as the name would suggest, can only happen in diabetic individuals. The main problem that occurs within this is that you have really high glucose levels as well as really high ketone body levels, and that's where the danger happens. If you're a fully functioning normal person without diabetes, you will never ever get into this state, and your pH will never ever get into the acidic level. This pie chart here is a really sort of a crude way of showing a ketogenic diet. There's a lot of controversy around the exact makeup of what it could be. A lot of people, when they see this, 80% fats, often run in terror, because it is completely against what a lot of people think conventional and healthy eating should be. Okay, so the main part of what I'm going to take us on with the talk is I'm going to be looking at this aspect of where we can use ketogenics for therapeutic potentials. I split it into what strong and more emergent evidence. The strong evidence is the evidence where we have a lot of really good studies, particularly within human trials that we've done, to show that this actually could be a really good therapeutic intervention. The first one I'm going to look at is specifically type 2 diabetes. We've also got some good speakers today, you can see some in the room, that are going to speak about their own personal experience with some of these disease states that I'm going to cover as well. So, first and foremost with type 2 diabetes. Now, within the NHS, type 2 diabetes takes up a lot of the budget and where the spend is going at the minute. And the future projections that by the year 2030, if we don't get diabetes under control, we could actually cripple the NHS with the amount of spend that has gone on diabetes. That's diabetes alone, or any other form of complication that comes with other conditions. Glucose metabolism and proper blood sugar regulation is one of the easiest ways that we can easily combat that spend. Now, there's been a whole lot of work gone into diabetes. This is where I actually specialise in my master's research as well. And for me, I can't completely understand why it is we're not recommending more of a carbohydrate restriction, particularly when it comes to diabetes management. This is just one study that I pulled out, but there has been a really key amount of body of evidence that's come out for the past 10 years now. This basically was a study that looked to compare a low carbohydrate ketogenic and a low glycemic index diet as well. And what they found was that low carbohydrate, all the markers, so you have your fasting glucose, your insulin, and what's known as your HbA1c, which is basically just a measure of diabetes over a certain amount of time. And what they found was that always within the low carbohydrate group, we had better improvements within it, and that was also independent of weight loss as well, which is what a lot of people say, oh, well, low carb just working just because of the weight loss. But this was actually controlled for and found that it wasn't within there. The next aspect is that it can actually reduce or completely eliminate the need for medication. Now, before type 2 diabetes became type 2 diabetes, it was often known as non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. They had to change that because diabetes is such a progressive condition. More often than not, most people will end up on insulin injections if they don't change their diet and their lifestyle. Now, for individuals with type 2 diabetes, the full mechanism isn't fully understood, but they find it really, really difficult to lose weight, which is a characteristic, and one of the main features and reasons it's believed for is the pharmacotherapy that they are on. So if you can get diabetics to reduce their medications or completely eliminate it, then that can have positive impacts with regards to weight loss as well. So cardiovascular disease we're coming on to. The first one is improvements in cholesterol profile, and a lot of people look at me like I'm crazy when I say this because the diet is obviously so high in fat. People automatically think that that is what's going to cause heart disease. Really highly saturated fat, you can eat butter. I mean, people look at me like I'm crazy. I think some of my friends often look at me with some of the foods that I eat and think I'm a bit mental. But actually, there's now a lot of work going into looking at your cholesterol profile. So not just what your total cholesterol is, but what the actual breakdown is. And there's quite a big difference between that. And what they are finding is that if you split it into, if you like, the good and the bad, and again there's debates over kind of exactly what that is, but what they find, so your triglyceride level is really an independent risk factor for a lot of conditions, things like metabolic syndrome and involved in heart disease. And a low carbohydrate diet, which is this line here, you can see how much more reduced that is in comparison to a low fat diet as well. And then likewise, we also have your HDL cholesterol, which is here, and that is technically what we class as your good cholesterol. You can see how high, you basically want obviously to have as high a level of this one as possible. You can see how much higher that can be raised in a low carbohydrate program in relation to a low fat program. So there is a lot more work coming out with that, and the whole hypothesis of saturated fat causes heart disease is now being really, really questioned and looked at. You've probably heard a lot about hype around that, how things like butter and fat are making a bit of a comeback. Second aspect is blood pressure. For me, working with clients, this has been one of the major things I have noticed. Anybody starting a low carbohydrate, particularly a ketogenic program, if they're on any form of blood pressure lower medications, they will need to get that reviewed pretty much within the first couple of weeks, because blood pressure naturally does drop on a low carbohydrate program, and that's both systolic and diastolic. The full mechanism, again, for a lot of this still isn't completely understood, but is really one of the major benefits that is noticed quite across the board, and most researchers find this as well. Okay, so looking at obesity, so a greater rate of weight loss often does come with it. Again, over the past 10 years, there's been a huge influx of the amount of really well-controlled studies that are coming out now comparing low carbohydrate to low fat. This one in the middle was the one that I just wanted to point out here. So this was done by a guy named Christopher Gardner in Stanford University. And he wanted to compare 4 major diets. So we've got the Atkins, the Zone, the Ornish, and the Lateral. And for those of you that don't know, the Ornish diet is a guy named Dean Ornish, based in the States, and it's pretty much everything that's opposite of Atkins. Excessively low fat, just they couldn't be more polar opposites if you tried. What was interesting about this study is Chris Gardner, and he actually talks about this when he presents, he used to be a vegan. And he went into this study with a little bit of bias, because he actually thought he was going to show that Dean Ornish diet was the one that was going to come out on top within there. But after a year, there's been subsequent 2-year follow-up within there. Unfortunately, that's not what he was able to find. And every which way he was looking at, he found that individuals following the Atkins program for weight loss and weight maintenance actually had better results than all of the 3 others involved in the study. He's actually subsequently added a little bit of meat back into his diet since there as well, and he makes that caveat before he presents. Does anybody know where this quote's from? Yeah. So we have odds here in your favour. So this is kind of a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and I think when a lot of people try and follow a weight loss program, they quite often think that the hungrier you are, the better that it's going to work. You know, you think you're doing something right by going hungry, but this couldn't be further from the truth. And quite naturally, when you lose weight, your body has certain mechanisms where it will increase your appetite, stimulate hormones, because it basically doesn't like to be losing weight. Your body can't understand why that is happening within there. Now within a ketogenic program, again, it's these 3 ketone bodies that we have, and what studies are now finding, for anybody that's followed a ketogenic diet and gotten really properly into that ketogenic range, your hunger basically disappears with it. And it's believed to be that these ketone bodies have very appetite suppressing compounds within them, and that particularly they affect appetite control hormones, and it's able to down-regulate those that are often quite raised, particularly when you lose weight within there. Okay, so moving on to emerging evidence, and I just want to say here, this is very much emerging evidence, so this is not about saying for these treatments that all conventional medicine is completely out the window. You'll see from a lot of what I'm going to present that it's still very, very new data within here. So the first one that I want to touch upon is cancer. So there's been a lot of hype now around looking at ketogenic diets in the treatment of cancer. And again, I think a lot of people think this is just coming out in the past sort of few years, but this guy here is a guy named Otto Warburg, and he actually won the Nobel Prize in the 1930s for his work into cancer treatment. And what he was trying to present was that cancer is a little bit more about a metabolic disease rather than being about genetics. And the main reason for this is what he found is that cancer cells themselves actually ferment glucose for energy. So they basically thrive on glucose for energy. And this is highlighted within, this is a PET scan, so this is obviously the gold standard for diagnosing and staging certain forms of cancers. And basically, the cancers that are glucose dependent will light up. So it basically shows the cancers obviously thrive and feed off the glucose within there. So he was obviously trying to highlight that it is a metabolic disease. Now, normal healthy cells, they have what's known as metabolic flexibility. So that means that they can go from using glucose for energy to using ketone bodies for energy. However, cancer cells lack this metabolic flexibility. And if you try to give cancer cells ketone bodies, they can't thrive. They can't grow, they can't divide, they can't replicate. So effectively, you're killing off the cancer cells. So this is a theory, and this is what this guy here, and this is what's now being picked up and taken forward with a lot of the research within there. The other aspects, a lot of people just say the main reason that a ketogenic diet works is because you cut off the glucose, and that's only really one part of the story with it. The other part is again in relation to the insulin levels. So having really high insulin levels can impact with regards to the cancer treatment as well. One of the major reasons for that is within your body we have what's known as signaling proteins. Now they're what are there for division, replication, and in cancer cells that is what's mutated. A lot of the drugs that are out there, a lot of the ones that are for targeted therapy are there to aim to work on these cell signaling proteins. However, what a lot of studies are finding now is that by just getting that insulin level down and down to quite obviously a chronically low level, they're finding that they have the same impact on those cell signaling proteins, just obviously without this added side effects that a lot of anti-cancer medications can actually have within there. This is a study, so there's really not that many human trials that have gone on recently within cancer. This is one that came out a couple of years ago by some guys based in New York. This was only in 10 patients. Within these 10 patients, these were patients that had really advanced cancer. They'd gone through lots of different therapies about 4 or 5 times and nothing was responding. So this was kind of their last sort of attempt to try and help with their cancer treatment. And basically, so Gene was the main lead on this study. Basically what he found was that for those individuals that they could get their insulin levels down really quite low and get them into this really ketotic state, they had the best improvements in their cancer. So a lot of those ones either went into partial or went into stable remission with their cancer treatments. But like I said, this was only done in 10 patients, so it's still very, very new data within there, and they still were maintaining all the other conventional treatments they were having as well. The next aspect is looking at neurological disorders. Now, if you remember me saying right back at the start, since the 1920s, epilepsy is probably the most studied aspect of ketogenic diets. It's used all across the world, particularly in children who don't respond well at all to anti-epileptic drugs. There's massive amounts of centres, so much research that goes on to here. So I'm not going to cover it within the emergent evidence because that is a very, very important form of therapy use within there. So the first one is looking at Alzheimer's disease in particular. So I'm not sure if many of you saw this. It was kind of about this time last year. There was a lot of media hype around calling Alzheimer's disease the new type 3 diabetes, and that was very much independent of whether or not you had type 1 or type 2 diabetes. And again, it comes back to this glucose and insulin. I think we can see a bit of a pattern of what's happening in a lot of these states that are happening within here. So basically, if your brain is functioning on glucose, that means obviously insulin is involved within there as well. Now, too high an insulin level in the brain can actually affect the molecules and the enzymes that are designed to cleave out all the waste products within the brain. Likewise, high glucose levels causes what's known as advanced glycation endpoints, and that basically means that really high blood sugar levels has caused certain proteins in the brain to become glycated. And it's these advanced glycation endpoints which have been shown to have a huge impact, particularly within Alzheimer's disease. So in the brain of Alzheimer's disease patients, they found really high levels of these advanced glycation endpoints, and that is what's thought to have a progress in the amyloid plaque disposition and the pathophysiology of Alzheimer's disease. The ketone bodies themselves. So again, there is a lot of work now going into particularly Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, traumatic brain injury and ALS. So when everyone was chucking water over your heads and freezing, that was a lot to do where it started with the ALS research. And it's now starting to look at the ketone bodies as a therapy. So the ketone bodies themselves, as well as having a huge impact with other parts, appetite suppressant, etc., they have actually been shown to have very protective effects within the brain, particularly within the hippocampal neurons, certain parts within there. They're able to promote nerve growth cells and help stimulate the brain to signal to it to promote more repair and nurturing of the myelin sheath, which is often what's damaged within these areas. They often help with the brain connectivity as well and stop those brain connectivities shrinking, which is what naturally happens when we age, and that's a problem where cognition and memory come into play as well. You can see from this that I put up here and it highlights it, and there's only, I think, three of these studies that have been done in humans. The rest have all been done in animal and cell cultures as well. So although it seems we've got quite a few amount of evidence, we need to get that translated into humans as well. All the ones that we have been done in humans, though, they are found in, particularly in Alzheimer's disease, vast improvements in cognition scores for those individuals that have high ketone bodies circulating in their blood. So possible issues. Although I'm a huge fan of ketogenic diets, it's not without their issues that can come with it. Ketogenic diet isn't something that you should ever go into lightly, and where possible you should never do it on your own unless you know what it is that you're doing. There's never going to be a one size for all. I think a lot of people go into this, and the pie chart that I showed at the beginning, people often think that's the levels you have to hit. However, there's lots of different reasons that could completely change from person to person. Poor formulation, so again a lot of people go into it and all they think is just get those carbs as low as possible and get that fat up there, but then what a lot of people forget about is your micronutrients, so your vitamins, your antioxidant status. And the problem is with micronutrient deficiency, it's quite often you won't notice that for the first 1 to 2 years after starting a program like this. So that's when a lot of the problems can come in. So if you just start this off without knowing what you're doing and don't formulate it properly, you probably will run into trouble within the first couple of years. Adherence. So I've obviously not kind of showed you exactly what ketogenics can look like, but for a lot of people it can be very difficult to stick to. Particularly if you have cancer, where there's other aspects going on, you can feel very difficult sticking with something like that. Social and culturally as well. We live in an environment where it's very hard to get away from very nice tasting food sometimes. We don't have enough of the evidence as well. So for example, if you were someone trying to do this for cancer treatment or certain neurological disorder, it can't be a case where you can just jump in and out of ketosis as and when you like. You probably would pay with some consequences within there as well. And gut health. So within the last year, there's been a massive explosion looking at gut health, so your gut bacteria. So all we know that you have good bacteria and bad bacteria. And what a lot of people are now saying is that again, if you don't formulate your ketogenic diet properly, you can have negative impacts with your gut flora, which again can affect and have a lot of impact on certain health states as well. So the future, where do I see it going? We definitely need a lot more long-term trials, and particularly human trials, before any, I think, other health professionals are going to really sort of look at this. Ketone supplementation, so this is getting really big in the States. So there's things, ketone esters and ketone salts. I wouldn't advise anybody to take those unless you really want to, because they taste absolutely disgusting if you're taking the proper ones. But what a lot of researchers are looking at now is seeing if we can get people into this ketogenic state without having to put them through the dietary manipulations, particularly for the disease states like cancer and neurological diseases. And then the last aspect is this sport and performance and more disease states as well. So there is a lot more people looking at certain aspects of the sporting, particularly around long distance sports as well. And if we can get people into this ketogenic state, will that mean they have a lot more energy in order to perform their sport a lot better as well. And that is everything. So thank you very much, and if anybody would like any questions, I shall be around to go to the next speaker before then, so I will be around if anybody has any questions within there. Perfect.